This is AJ Wachtel. Welcome to my podcast, Wachtelligence, where I discuss with my guests the past, present, and future of the local and national music scene with a focus on Boston and New England. Today's episode, Harvey Brooks. Who's Bob Dylan? Is about the iconic life and career of the fabulously famous four-stringer who was one of the founding fathers of the folk rock and jazz fusion music genres, playing on Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited and New Morning albums, and Miles Davis's Bitches Brew and Big Fun, cemented his spot as a true visionary in the music industry. From New York City to Woodstock, to Tucson, Arizona, to Laurel Canyon in California, to Westport, Connecticut, to Jerusalem, Israel, Harvey Brooks has had an incredible life. He's also had a very busy year writing his autobiography, View from the Bottom, 50 years playing bass with Bob Dylan, The Doors, Miles Davis, and everybody else, and releasing new music on his Elegant Geezer, the Jerusalem Session CD. Joining Harvey is his very talented wife, Bonnie Brooks, who co-wrote this terrific tome and also wrote the great children's book, Gramps Has a Ponytail. She's his soulmate and also introduced me to her husband. Hi, Harvey and Bonnie. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Wachtelligence.
Hey,
how cool.
How cool.
We're in Boston, yes?
It's cold up here today. It's freezing. Is it nice? Well, at least it's sun down there. You've had your day. I had to deal with I think it's about 25 degrees out here today.
We had 54 was our high today. We were lucky, though.
But it was cold all week.
We had frozen pipes 2 days ago.
But you went out with your dog walk this morning, right?
Oh, of course.
Our 5:30, aren't we lucky?
Before we get any further, I just wanted to thank you for generously giving me your 2 songs to use from your new Elegant Geezer CD that we use for the intro and the outro. We use the Plum for the intro and Freeman for the outro. And here we are in the first, episode of season 2. So, you're good friends, and I really appreciate all your help and support with me.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
And we've worn your shirts, but you've got to get a size small. For me, it's like down past my knees. So I can't wear it all the time. I'll look ridiculous or very religious. Yeah.
Let's talk about the book. Why did you write the book, Harvey?
Okay, I really, for whatever reason, thought my stuff was interesting. So I told Bonnie after we got married and during that early time period that I really wanted to do a book about the experiences I had in doing the records that I did and the shows I played and the people that I met in the business, and Bonnie was very sympathetic to it. And all along, she knows amazing amounts of people. She has great contacts. She knows.
She co-wrote the book with you.
It's it's
with Frank Beecham. He's incredible. He's a historian.
So between us, Bonnie was able to get me to focus long enough to remember sentences and things that happened and to be able to explain them. And as we got through a few different co-authors that didn't work out, Bonnie discovered Frank Beecham on Facebook and talked to him and got him together with us. And then all of a sudden we were having interviews with Frank in New York, us in Israel, and him talking to people like John Sebastian and Donald Fagen, and putting all these things together, and Bonnie just keeping everything in focus.
The thing about Frank that I found on Facebook, Facebook is a funny thing. It's right. Good and it's bad. But the thing is, you meet people that you learn from. And with wide shots of what people were sharing, Frank Beecham historically really got into history of what was going on, and in fact had been at one of the sessions with Harvey way back when, and Harvey doesn't even remember him, but he was there. So it became very simpatico intellectually for me, because I come to this not with that history.
Hey, tell me about, how'd you get involved with Tangible Press with, who was it, John Howell?
John Howell's. Well, when we finished the book, having gotten it out to a lot of people, different publishers,
Right.
and not hearing a response, and the fact that Corona hadn't quite hit yet, I put out on Facebook, and you might remember it, was it possible that somewhere out there somebody might be interested in publishing this book that we had done?
I do.
All right. And John responded, and I said, we don't know him. He doesn't know us, but he's willing to do it. And why not? I mean, books and music today, who knows? Some make it, some don't make it. If you're on Simon and Schuster, hey, that's great. But if not, at least it's out there, and
Right.
have some fun with it.
We got it done.
And it's out.
Yeah.
So.
And John
He's a good guy.
is a good guy, a sympathetic publisher. We have good communication, and it's great.
Bonnie, I don't remember how you and I started talking, but you and I became friends.
You emailed me and thought that we had some people that in common.
Right.
Is what happened, and thought I had more in the music business, and I didn't. And I was like, well, okay, he's a smart man. We kind of got into talking, and I said, like, why not? And I think that's what you've done as well.
Then we sent those pastries.
Well, that was way later.
Is that way later?
That was way later,
okay.
when we and you never told us you were, I don't know if you want the world to know, a diabetic. I never would have sent, because I'm a health food nut, never would have sent you those. I might have sent you like sesame candy or something.
Right.
Or, I don't know. But
That was great, because you two sent me pastries from your favorite Arab bakery in Jerusalem, and they're so different than here. There's no icing on it. It's different wheats and different honeys, and it was delicious. But I thought that was just so cool. All right, let's go to the book. In the beginning, your sister took you to Alan Freed's shows. Your sister Roberta. Did you see Buddy Holly?
No, I wish I could have seen Buddy Holly, but I saw it was all R&B. It was Murray the K shows, Alan Freed shows, and it was all doo-wop, pretty much. I would get on my sister and I would
Right.
get on the bus and bus and trains at 5:30 in the morning, and these were my first concerts. See, the big Al Sears big band. Panama Francis with a big band, and it's the Cleftones and all of these kind of doo-wop groups, and it was extraordinary. Chuck Berry, extraordinary, and that was kind of like my introduction into thinking about music, and I never thought at those times I was there purely as a fan, just loving the stuff that I heard and getting further into it. And so that was kind of the whole the introduction. And I will tell you, Bo Diddley. I saw Bo Diddley doing, just right off the bat, and it was so strange with this strange guitar and giant amplifiers, and way ahead of his time, and it was amazing. But these were the kind of things, and the quality, the harmony, it was all A1. So.
You've known Al Cooper from Blood, Sweat, and Tears and the Blues Project since high school. When you were in competing bands together, that's remarkable. You got into band, and your first gig was in Roxbury, Massachusetts, around 1963, right around the corner from my house.
If I would have known. I would have come knocking rather than sleeping in the hotel they gave us.
Well, you talk about the Hooker Haven Hotel. That's
right.
Probably Dunkin' Donuts now.
Oh, Well, that would be good. That would be good. That was an amazing scenario, and early experience, early chops about what's going on in it, and it's kind of like you learn, you're in these places and you're playing and you're performing and everybody's in the same place when you're doing it. It's great. The audience, the players, the whole show. And then when it's over, you're back in the regular world. And so that Roxbury situation was revealing to me, and it was great. It was an incredible thing. I'm glad to have gone through it. It's part of the chops that you get, the experiences, which I don't think you can do anymore. It's not like that.
Al Cooper called you up and asked you, can you play bass tomorrow at a recording session with Bob Dylan? And you said, who's Bob Dylan?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. I mean, I had no knowledge of it. Al, he knew. Al's a guy that always goes out for it. And we had played in a lot of situations. I took over for his bass player when he left. And then I had my own band at the same time. I've been playing 6 nights a week since I was 18, or 18 and a half. And so I was kind of used to playing things on the immediacy. And when Cooper called and said, "You want to play this?" I never heard of Bob Dylan, not a folkie, and I was just playing pretty much straight ahead R&B or pop music, something like that. And when I went to the session, this was a whole other world. For me, it was.
But you were coming in from playing R&B out on the road.
Yeah, I was on tours with the Exciters and all these kind of.
In the winter. Some of the stories he tells look, Al Cooper, Al's mother and father were very good friends of my parents. My father was his Boy Scout leader. Anyway, in the realm of the world, I have to say Al's mother's a gem, but Al's an incredibly talented man. And Harvey, the two of them come together as friends, but, very different as far as road warriors. Because I think Al is more pop and Harvey came in more from being out on the road with literally R&B bands in the winter in an old car, sitting between, who were they in the back seat? I don't know how you did it.
Lillian and Caroline, I think, as I recollect. But that was the way you did tours then. Olds 88 with the group and me going up the coast in the blizzards and playing all these small little clubs and staying in the motels at night. And it was a great experience, but I was glad to move on.
But it was also, they were black bands, and so the hotels that you could stay at were not the same as other people. Horrifying. Right. And what it was historically. And for Harvey, who came out of, his apartment with his parents in Queens, and I have to say, the community was very white bread, to go and do that with such love and free spirit, to me, I find amazing. Because we were sheltered.
Yeah, it infiltrated my soul. I mean, it just got deep down into that, and so it's always been a natural thing for me. And I'm very comfortable with all peoples, and that's a good thing. So Bob Dylan, when I met Bob Dylan, he was at the console listening to Like a Rolling Stone, which had been recorded previously.
Right, you were in the second session for the Highway 61 Revisited album.
Right, so I came in and, Bob, he gave me a little recognition that I existed. And that was it. Basically, I met his manager and then I'm back into the studio, plugging in and getting ready to go. But But when I heard, the stuff that we were doing, it was just, it's another level of energy, another level of professionalism and expectancy. Things had to happen right there, and there was another pressure that went along with it, which I found wonderful. I mean, at the same
you met
time,
Mike Bloomfield. He just walked in and you met and you hit it off immediately. In what way?
but just basically, and as there were no rehearsals, so it's not like we sat down and said, "Hey, how you doing?" No, it was just right there. But we had a simpatico. I listened to what he was playing.
Right.
All the players there, we listened. It was all about listening and getting something in that worked. I don't think anybody there played the best they ever played. But what we did is we played great band music that worked with the songs. And so all those things were dependent. I was dependent on what the drummer was doing. He gave me signals. The guitars, the keyboards, everything was dependent and spontaneous at that moment. And it was an incredible experience. And I saw Dylan writing lyrics as we're working and constantly working it over, and everybody zoning in to the energy source, Bob Dylan, what he did. And, just getting it and making notes any way you can get through it to the song to get the best part you could get, because it wasn't going to be coming around a lot of times. So you had to get it in there, as it's happening. And I think it was an amazing session.
Well, 4 days before you met him, he was booed off stage at Newport Folk Festival with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band backing him. Was that ever talked about when you first met him?
No. I mean, the only talk about it was in reference. It may have come up when we went to do the Forest Hills concerts, but at those sessions, I was replacing a couple of really seasoned session bass players,
right?
And Jerome from Butterfield's band. So I fit. So if I fit, then it must have been the right thing. So the sessions went on, and then at Forest Hills, Bob in our little huddles, it was coming from the last experience they had with Butterfield, which the folkies were not accepting the fact that their icon was going electric. It was just such an alien thing to them. Here it was similar. We sort of won them over in the second half, but it really didn't get the warm reception until we got to the Hollywood Bowl. That's kind of where it started to get warmer. But the band kicked. The band was great. And in spite of themselves, towards the end in the Forest Hills concert, the general audience enjoyed it. They finally had to give a little bit. It hurt, but we got to him.
Well, he was transforming from a pure folk artist, to a rock and roll legend when you were there.
That's it. Well, he created that whole singer-songwriter, pop, folk, singer-songwriter, country. It went all over the place. The Byrds in Los Angeles.
Right.
I mean, it was just enormous what happened.
Did the times make the man, or did the man make the times?
I got to say, the man made the times, because the time is continual. It's always going on, and it can go on unnoticed if
right.
Nobody's standing out and saying something. But he said a lot. And no matter, if you got hung up in the music of it or hung up in the politics of it, that's your problem. But he was giving a lot of great insight on ways to think. The things I thought I agreed with, and some I didn't agree with. But I never really, it was just like incredible stories. What a storyteller.
You were just talking about the chemistry of the band that first session. When I listened to your bassist introduction to Bloomfield's solo on Tombstone Blues, it just kills it. When he sings Mama's in the Factory, your plane just explodes.
Well, that's what happens.
Do you get any royalties from any of the Dylan songs?
There's about three or four different income sources that come from that material as a player. So yes, the answer is yes. Not what he gets, but there are income streams.
We know that Dylan wrote the words, but how complete were the melodies, and how involved were you guys and the other musicians in crafting the melodies behind Bob's words?
It's all him. It's all him. All we did was construct a vehicle for him to ride on, because we sat and listened to him play, I need to make chord charts or whatever, but all we're doing is accompanying what he's doing, his rhythm, his melody. It's all his stuff, and we just enhance it. And the only, if there's a solo every now and then, great, but it's basically all about him.
What do you think about Johnny Winter's version of Highway 61?
Rock and roll. I mean, Johnny Winter's great. And, it's another look at it, but just good, really good. But it's not the original, but it's a nice other version.
Do you still keep in touch with him?
Indirectly. Mainly, like if there's a concert, like when he came here, we go and we see him, but not on a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month basis.
When was the last time you spoke to him?
Last time I spoke to him
was in New York.
Was in New York, and we were playing at
China Club.
At the China Club, and he had come down to say hi, say hi, and to some of the other guys in the band as well. Got a good hug and a good hey, and that was it.
You were just talking about playing with Robbie Robertson and Bob Dylan at Forest Hills. You joined the Electric Flag in '67. What were the differences as guitar players, and which of the two guitarists was easier for you to play with?
Well, my experience with Robbie was everything was, since there had been a recording already, there was a platform to work from. There was charts to work from. Robbie, very tight player, and a little stiff, but melodically.
You said more precise.
More precise.
Does that mean less jamming?
Not jammy at all. I mean, even his licks and stuff are pretty thought out. Bloomfield is just totally spontaneous guy. No matter how many times you could play the same thing, he's going to give you a version of that. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be, sometimes it'll be better, sometimes it'll be worse, sometimes it'll be amazing, sometimes it'll be a totally different take. But just two different, entirely different players, both enjoyable to play with.
On Highway 61, the album, that's the only album where you're credited with your birth name, Harvey Goldstein, and that's because of anti-Semitism. Tell me the story about that.
Well, after the Hollywood Bowl, I was hired to go, previously to the Hollywood Bowl concerts, I was contracted to go to Detroit, not to Detroit, to,
was it Michigan?
Yeah, it's in Michigan. I forgot the, and it was a club, it was like a kind of a jazz club, and it was with a trio. Wyandotte, thank you, babe. Wyandotte, Michigan. So when the set ended, I go out back at the club. I'm going to have a smoke. At that time, I smoked. I don't anymore. I went outside to the back, took out a cigarette, lit it up, breathing in the fresh air, and there's 4 of these guys that were previously just standing in front enjoying the show. They're outside waiting for me, and they start calling me kike, fat Jew boy, all of this wonderful, hateful kind of thing, and start pushing me and punching, and I'm elbowing back because I don't want to hurt the fingers because I got to play the next set. And luckily, right about that time, as it's getting a little hot, some people come out the back door, and these guys back away, and that's it. So, it was a very unpleasant thing, and it's my real first taste of anti-Semitic activity. And so from there, when I'm done with that gig, I'm booked to go to Grossinger's in the Catskill Mountains.
Borscht Belt.
Borscht Belt. That's my next gig. And so I go, and I'm sitting at the diner at the foot of the hill that leads to the hotel, and I'm reflecting, on what I just left from Wyandotte. And, I'm ordering, and then I look out the window and I see a big sign that says Nat Brooks at the Raleigh Hotel. And I'm Nat Brooks. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, Brooks. Well, that's about as anything could be anything. So I'm having a dual thing. Well, look, that's not my name. Goldstein's my name. But, entertainers have stage names. So I'm saying, well, okay, so if I'm Harvey Brooks, then it's just Harvey Brooks, and that's all you're thinking about, just a guy who does whatever he does. I don't feel that way anymore, but that's how I felt then.
What'd your family say about it?
Well, they've been tolerating me through all my experience. so.
But you have a brother who also took on, Harvey's brother, Gary, is a musician as well. And he's now Gary Brooks. So I guess they accepted it, became it.
Right. And then,
yeah.
and then after 9/11, after that happened, security got very difficult. And so we had to change our names legally to where now my name is Harvey Goldstein Brooks, because so many checks and stuff like that comes to Brooks. So I had to have Brooks ID, or when I went to the airport, no go.
That Nat Brooks was a popular horn band from the 40s to the 70s. And if you two guys got into a band together and called yourselves the Brooks Brothers, that might have been, the clothing company could have made it easy street for you guys for the rest of your lives.
Right, we could have taken the Borscht Belt by storm.
We saw him in Tucson.
We saw him in Tucson, and we saw him also here.
Here.
I guess
what
that was
about. We're here 13 years, so it was like.
Whenever he was here last.
It was like.
Yeah, but I'm not a.
You have a bit, with Dylan, you have such a. I can't overestimate. What a big part in the creation of folk rock and jazz fusion you are. On Dylan's songs, the song's properties, the chords, the rhythms, the melodies. You add the color with the pickups and the bridges and the fills. With Miles and his Bitches Brew album, you say it was all about personality. How his acerbic take on life gave you direction and inspiration. What do you mean by that?
Both extremely spontaneous. Bob's stuff is all worked out. He works it out himself. And when he gets with the band, it gets enhanced. My experience with Miles, I've been listening to Miles all my life, play the standards and all the songs that are, and what he did to them. It's his creativity, his point of view about stuff. Not many people can walk off the stage and keep the band playing and come back in 20 minutes later and go, ba-da! It takes chutzpah.
Yeah.
And so, and Dylan, chutzpah, the same kind of thing. Miles, for me, the circumstance I was in, it was totally dependent on him, when to play, when not to play, but not what to play, when or not to when play. The idea being, so that was the thing. But both of them very sarcastic about life, sharp point of view, soft, hard, but very clear about what they want to do. Bob, you sit down to play those tunes, there's no doubt in what it is, and he knows what it's supposed to sound like. Now, Miles, in the stuff I did with him, he knew not what, it was totally a spontaneous experience. The idea is to create these things, and these things to create other things from it.
Right.
Then, in the editing process, he and Tio would get together and then make a whole other entity of what it is. And there was a re-release of the original album without edits,
right?
Which Tio hated, and he didn't want out. But it's valid. That's exactly what it was. And here's the version when you edit it and make it what they wanted it to be, which is what happens in the creative process. Either you can leave it the way it is, or you can take it and create further. And they took it and created further.
Moving on, you moved to Woodstock in 1970 and founded the fabulous Rhinestones. What a great band. In the first tour, the Eagles opened up for you. And then on the second tour, you guys opened up for Stevie Wonder and Sly and the Family Stone. What was Sly like?
Sly, he operated in his own world, his own sphere of time. First of all, they were incredible innovators. So when they came out of San Francisco, they were amazing. The bass player created that whole funk style. They were amazing. As it went on in that time period, and the drugs took a bigger toll on their ability to function, the whole band took the attitude of, well, when we get there, we'll get there. Don't worry about it. Let me tell you something. You don't want to be the opening band for that. Audience gets hostile. We're playing, and it was a good band. We could play, and
right.
we could do it. But they wanted to hear Sly, and so by the end of the set, Sly, and then it starts to get violent, and people start, and that happened a few times.
When you were in the Village, you mentioned your book you jammed with Otis Spann, Muddy Waters, and James Cotton.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that gig?
That was at the Cafe a Go-Go. They had these blues weekends, and so it was with Muddy's drummer, and it was just an incredible jam session to play with these guys, and backstage we'd be sharing the stories of the different things that were going on. And these guys were kind of the models. I look and I see like Muddy, and what they were doing, they were going on, and their whole life was on the road, and so I got so much of that from that. And I said, is that what it's going to be for me? But it was incredible to play because those guys, like Muddy's thing with backbeat, it was all about the backbeat. And no matter how seasoned the drummer was, he's going to lift that hand up and go, bam! Give me that backbeat. And that's kind of like a lesson that like stayed with me throughout everything. The heartbeat, and you learn to go in front of it, behind it, around it, but always creating, the heartbeat. I played this gig, and Cotton had just came in and sat, he sat in, it was at the Cafe a Go-Go.
Yeah.
And he sat in and just he was such an enormous energy and
Presence, yeah.
playing and singing, and then Albert Grossman managed him for a while and they made the greatest. I did a couple singles with them, the greatest stuff, but he couldn't get out. He couldn't, he had his niche that he could play, but he never really got the recognition he should have. I mean, he was kind of like one of the kings.
You headed west to start a new band. In '67, Electric Flag did the soundtrack for the counterculture psychedelic film The Trip. I haven't seen that for decades. That starred Peter Fonda and was written by Jack Nicholson with Bruce Dern and Susan Strasberg. You took your first hit of acid then. Was that the Owsley? Did you ever meet Owsley?
I met Owsley. I didn't hang with Owsley, but I did meet him at the Fillmore. And I did meet him through his psychedelia. That movie was stepping out of sanity into insanity. Just everything about. I'm in San Francisco with the Electric Flag, and basically we're there rehearsing, and it's going to be the next big band, and so I'm introduced to the Fillmore, and now Buddy Miles had picked me up at the airport, and Buddy and I were hanging a little bit, and we went into the Fillmore, and we got involved in meeting the people. But I went and got a drink, I got a drink of Pepsi, so I thought, and that was my first psychedelic experience. And who knew? Who knew? And it was a different thing. My life changed.
That film got censored all over the country too, and I don't understand why.
Well, it was censored because it was spreading insanity.
Bullshit.
Somehow they thought that by cutting this, they thought that this movie was responsible, which is absurd. It's a product of what was going on. But, the whole thing for us was Peter Fonda came up to hire the band. All that went down, and we went into the studio, saw it without the music, and spontaneously created the soundtrack, which was, I thought, pretty interesting.
Yes, it is.
And we weren't high on acid.
But you did party with Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, and Jack Nicholson, correct?
Yes, we did. And Jack took me downtown, and we went and we saw. I couldn't believe. I can't remember the name of that club now.
Don't look at me. Wasn't there.
But so that's when I saw the first go-go boots, the first that kind of disco kind of club, and Nicholson was great. He really gave me a good tour, dropped me off. It took us, I think, maybe a week to do the soundtrack, and then we were off to Monterey.
Now let's talk a little bit. Everybody wants to hear about Monterey Pop.
For the festival, all of the San Francisco bands represented one thing. All of the Los Angeles bands, represented a whole other thought process, which made it difficult, for the festival to come off. But it did, with Otis and Jimmy and all of these great players. The Electric Flag, we were coming in there as like the prodigal sons, and some people loved us. Most people loved us, but some of the critics didn't like the fact that we were doing so much R&B and black stuff, and that we weren't more creative in poppier stuff.
I've seen some of the videos. I've seen like Over Loving You.
Right.
Is the complete performance available anywhere today?
No.
Why?
Albert Grossman wouldn't let them, he wouldn't give permission to do the flag unless they gave the paupers that Albert was managing from Canada. So
Right.
because they wouldn't do that, they wouldn't use the paupers, they wouldn't film the paupers, the electric flag was left out.
But you were in the re-release. I don't know how much of it.
Right. We had a lawyer to get to that, to get the money from that. But they did re-release 2 tunes. I think it was 2 tunes.
So there's still half a set that no one's heard.
No, that's right.
Crazy. You know, at Monterey Pop, you in your book, you popped into a tent with Brian Jones from the Stones and Janis Joplin and Mike Bloomfield talking. What were Brian and Giants like off stage?
Well, what I got in that conversation was, one, funny, energetic, very abstract thinking. I mean, the conversation went all over the place, you know, but, you know, how groovy, you know, it was funny. And Bloomfield ended up taking the groovy line to the stage. He got so much into it's just so groovy, man, you know, and Janis, you know, this was her shot, you know, and she was fired up, and everybody was just fired up, ready to go and play, but just talking about the politics of the world. And there was a like mind that this could save the world. You know, if we could take these kind of concerts, this kind of feeling, because, you know, all the people that were there were in a very good place. There was no violence. There was no pushing around, or there was nothing negative going on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and that was that. But it was really my little chipping of acid was starting to come on. So I sort of had to back out. It was getting a little too much for me.
You were talking about the acid. You watched Jimmy's performance from 10 feet away off stage. What do you remember about his set?
Well, first of all, I knew Jimmy well, you know, from New York. And I saw him do his gymnastics, playing behind his head, doing all that kind of stuff. But what he did that night, it was so intense and so on, you know. And then he lit the guitar on fire. It was like, who knew? You know, it was a fantastic set. And I was never thrilled with Noel Redding as a bass player, but he kind of fit right in for what was happening there.
Yeah, you say that his playing was very reserved. What do you mean by that?
Well, he was there and he filled a slot, but he really didn't contribute that much. You know, playing with Jimmy, you really had the opportunity to add a lot to it, you know. And but it was an incredible set. So between him and Mitch, the fire was covered.
You know, I knew Buddy and Noel. I knew Noel pretty well, and I asked Noel if Experience ever rehearsed, and he goes, "We never practiced." And then I asked Buddy Miles if a band of gypsies rehearsed. He goes, "Oh yeah, we rehearsed a lot."
Well, you know what the difference is? The difference is they played together all the time. I forget the bass player's name, but he's great in the Gypsies. These
Billy
guys,
Koch.
yeah, fabulous. And so they played any opportunity. The reason that Jimmy why they didn't play with Noel is that it wasn't really playing. It was just working out the tunes for the show, for the gig, you know, and that's okay. That's okay, because it gave Jimmy the platform he needed at that time to develop. So
you got to shake Otis Redding's hand. How'd that happen?
Well, the Otis just made it in time for the show, and I was still in that Jimi Hendrix corner. I was mesmerized into that corner, and then they showed up. It was right after that, and
that first song that he did, the Sam Cooke's version of "Shake." Wow.
After in the end of the conversation, in the end of everything, because Otis, that whole band, that's kind of like we had modeled ourselves after them, and James Brown and some of the other R&B acts. Tight, funky, incredible. And so, like, as Otis was coming by, I said, "Pleasure to meet you, Otis. My name's Harvey Brooks." And Otis, "Oh, yeah." Boom, gone.
I wouldn't wash my hand.
Amazing. But I got to talk to Duck. Duck Dunn was one of my idols.
The Electric Flag played at Psychedelic Supermarket at 590 Comm Avenue in Boston, inside a parking garage with no windows and bad sound, and it's right near Kenmore Square. You opened for Cream playing 10 gigs while they were rehearsing for Disraeli Gears. I'm going to ask you about that, but I heard that you guys got together at a Jim Kweskin Jug Band party in Roxbury. He was a biggie on Club 47 in Harvard Square, which is now Pastemes. Right. So tell me a little bit about Jim Kweskin Jug Band and about playing at the Psychedelic Supermarket.
Well, I can't tell you too much about the Jug Band, except I knew Maria. I knew Kweskin a little bit. But the gig was an amazing. We couldn't believe when we walked in, and the first thing we did, we started the sound check, and so we get set up and we go on the sound check, and the trumpet player, Marcus, he had a little bit of a junk habit, we hit the first chord and Marcus goes face forward off the stage, right on a horn.
Right.
That was the beginning of that gig. And he said, no problem. I can play. Well, it took him, he didn't play too much. But it was
10 days opening up for Cream, who were rehearsing for Disraeli Gears, right?
Yeah, and it was crazy, and we just, by about the third day, Marcus was almost back. But was the worst acoustics ever. Everything was bouncing all over the place. And we had 4 horns, and the horn players really had a hard time hearing the pitch. But then, I remember one thing, I forget who it was, but we were in a car going to somebody's, to drop Mike Bloomfield off somewhere. And we're driving, and we get kind of cut off, and Bloomfield opens up his window and starts screaming at these people. And then he spits out the window and hits the side of the car, and it's steaming. It could get venomous. It was a very tense 10 days.
The first time you met Jim Morrison, you were gigging at the Whiskey Go-Go. He was dancing and was drunk and collapsed at your feet. He apologized later, correct?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Robbie, the guitar player, he came backstage and we started talking, and I said, I was telling him about this crazy drunk guy came up and was licking my toes, and Robbie said, "Oh, that's Jim Morrison. He's the singer with my band, with the Doors." And I was not that familiar with the Doors, but I heard their stuff, and so after that, Robbie invited me to come out to Malibu and jam with them, which led to the album that I did, Soft Parade.
you said in your book that the difference between Densmore, The Doors, and Buddy Miles and Electric Flag was that Densmore's groove was tight, musical, and thoughtful, and Buddy's was powerful and emotional. How does that change your playing?
Playing, well, it doesn't really change my playing in the sense of I'm dealing with two different animals. For one, I have to play tight and in with, like with Densmore, with the Doors, the lines really have to be specific and stay out of the way of the vocalist and make the rhythm section solid.
Right.
Playing with Buddy, it's a lot of, so even the bass lines come out to be sometimes more rhythmical. There's more room to do other kinds of things. So it's less tighter. It's tight. It's very tight, but it's more behind the beat, so there's more tension. Again, the Doors are, I gave a little bit behind the beat, but they're very, they were very straight.
Well, you said that, when you joined the Doors, when you played on Soft Parade, that they were a dysfunctional band.
Well, they were having political problems amongst themselves, and to get them all together at the same time, the songs were written in sections, it is to my awareness, and the thing I had to do was connect it. I had to connect them, and I had to give it a theme.
Well, you witnessed Jim Morrison going nuts on the band when they sold "Light My Fire" to Buick. Come on, Buick, light my fire.
Well, I didn't see it, but I became aware of it, and I was aware of the repercussions that came from it, which were that they, Morrison no longer considered it a band. He considered it them and me. And I think they got back together spiritually later on, but I don't think it was ever the same.
I read in your book, it's very funny. You say that you played 2 live shows with the Doors, and that in the late 60s at the Forum in California at Madison Square Garden in New York City on January 24th, 69. And you say that Jerry Lee Lewis opened the show and was booed. He gave the audience the finger and told them, "I hope you all have a heart attack." What was that like?
That was Jerry Lee. Jerry Lee Lewis, an amazing guy, a great artist, but he took no prisoners. He didn't hold back. He said what he had to say. And I don't blame him. I don't know, Jerry Lee Lewis, you're lucky to have him there. But these people, it was not his audience. It was not his audience at all.
I met Jerry Lee at the channel once, and I was 3 inches away from him, and I shake his hand, "Welcome to Boston." I asked him a question, and he had a young lady next to him. So it was us 3 right off stage. So I asked him a question, and he turns to the girl and answers my question to her. She turns to me 3 inches away and repeats exactly what he said. So I'm sitting there saying, "Man, this is very, very, it's like a Salvador Dali movie."
Amazing. Jerry Lee.
Did you get along with him personally?
I said hello. How you doing, Jerry? That was it. I didn't have any relationship.
At the Forum, when you were playing with the Doors, you were standing behind Morrison when he started to get angry with the audience. They wanted to hear old hits like "Light My Fire," not the new Soft Parade music.
No tolerance, really. I mean, he went out. The thing was, it was all a difficult experience for him. And then to go there,
right,
knowing he has to do these songs because it's the new album and he's got to promote it, and they're giving him, the ticket out, do all the stuff we love.
Right.
And so he's getting frustrated and he blows his top, and he does a Jim Morrison, and the audience, when they smell blood, they go for it. He was bleeding, and they were coming in for him.
Right. Yeah, at Madison Square Garden, you played a Doors song, Adolf Hitler, as an encore. I never heard that song before. What was that song about? Why did Doors decide to play it?
I'll do you one better. I didn't even know we did it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't hear any of the lyrics. I didn't know anything about it. And I was just playing. I'm standing back, and I'm just listening to the chords and the changes. I don't know where that came from to this day. And it was wild. I mean, and the sound was so bad that, somehow I got through it.
What's your favorite Doors song to play and why?
Touch Me, because I did the record. It was a hit, and it was fun to play. It was funny. It's like a funny kind of lick. Cleaner than dirt.
You moved to California Dreaming with Cass Elliot. I want to hear, I remember reading about you had a party at Peter Tork's Laurel County home with Jimmy Stills, Steve Stills' buddy, and Joni Mitchell jam. What did you guys play?
It was playing everything and anything. A lot of just kind of making it up. I don't remember the repertoire, but I will tell you, it was an amazing group of people. A lot of blues stuff.
Well, when you were out there, you got involved musically with Cass Elliot, and she had sung vocals on Electric Flag's first single, "Groovin' Is Easy." Yeah. I love the horns in that tune. You played on her first solo album, "Dream a Little Dream," with John Sebastian from Lovin' Spoonful, Stills, Elvis's guitarist James Burton, and Jim Gordon on drums from Derek and the Dominoes. He's in jail for murdering his mother, a convicted felon. Do you have any wild Jim Gordon stories?
That was my only experience with him, and it was great. He was like friendly and nice and like a really cool guy. I was sitting next to James Burton, who's like, is one of those guys, great, incredible, played with all those great early Ricky Nelson stuff. And I saw he had a banjo, and I said, "Hey, Jimmy, I didn't know you played banjo." And I said, "Is that like a different kind of tuning?" And what? He said, "Well, I'll tell you a secret. I tune it like a guitar, and I play it like a guitar, only it sounds like a banjo." So I became kind of friend. We became friends, and he invited me to his house in the Valley and to a country club, country music, and we were sitting there, and he got up to play, and they called him up, and it was just a great spending time with like a guy who really had a handle on those kind of sounds, and didn't drink. And just played his ass off. But back to the session, it was a great session. It was all good players. I got from that, I got hired to do her Caesar's Palace gig, which was an extraordinary experience. But John Simon hired me for that album. He's a great piano player and a great producer. So that's that.
You talk about, sad to read about Cass's decline in a disaster at Caesar's Palace show when you were playing in the band. The Mamas and the Papas were in the audience and she's cursing them out. How sad, man.
She had a real good opportunity to, do the things she wanted to do, establish her career. And, she had the bad luck of being, of having boyfriends that would, giving her all the drugs she wanted, and kind of, took whatever real opportunity she had and killed it because we had no rehearsals. It was not
Crosby,
possible.
Stills, Nash and Young asked you to be in their band when they were forming. But you got fired or something like that, correct?
Yeah, yeah. That was a bad streak coming up there. The thing of it was, they wanted me to be a session player, and when they hired me, it was to be part of the band, and that's two different things. So in Sag Harbor is where the rehearsals were for the Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Yeah.
That didn't work out, and I was with Paul Harris. Same thing happened to him. And John Sebastian was finishing up his album, and we finished up the album with John. To this day, Crosby, Stills and Nash, that's a great, they did a great thing, but, I think they gave me a raw deal.
You were talking about Janis before. You told me that she smelled like patchouli oil, Southern Comfort, and sweat. Well, you saw her, singing Sam and Dave's "Hold On, I'm Coming" with Jim Morrison drunk and trying to sing the harmonies, right?
That was a riot. It was a riot. That whole 3 or 4 days was complete insanity. We took it uptown to the scene and kept going. And again, Jim Morrison comes in and comes down, and he's licking my toes. I never got what was going on twice, but he was just howling. I mean, there was a guy who had a great lot of intellect,
right.
A very intelligent man, and took himself to that degree, not once, twice, I mean, a lot more than that,
Well,
and
didn't that event end with him on his knees and Janis laughing and pouring her bottle of Jose Cuervo Gold on him?
That was the one at Paul's loft, Paul Harris's loft down in Soho.
You once had a jam at Steve Pearl's The Scene in New York City with Jim Morrison, Buddy Miles, and you. You called it a very creative performance. Have you ever gotten a bootleg of that?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I have a bootleg of it. The thing, it was one of those kind of things. There was no great recording apparatus, but everybody was so whacked that it was all it was creativity. There was no actual playing together. It was just going for it, individually going for it. Which has virtues unto its own. But that's up to the listening of it. If you've ever listened to it, I would wonder what your conclusions were. Mine were, it was like nuts. But I loved it. It was fun.
Getting back to Janis, we were talking about it. You said that her breakthrough performance at Monterey Pop impressed everyone. What do you think made her live shows so great?
Well, she had the charisma.
Right.
She was very comfortable out with the stage, with the audience. Very comfortable. And she could hit it. She could get it. Funny thing is, I just saw a performance with Beth Hart, who I'd never heard before, who reminded me so much of Janis, and further, more than Janis. But Janis was amazing. She just really broke through and just really brought women to the front. Very strong a presence. So she was great. Albert Grossman loved her.
So it's communication and personality over again.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And she could make a lot of the notes. She could make a lot. Very powerful, and you felt her, and you liked her. That's
in your book. You one of your chapters, chapter 16, is the Miles Davis experience. You call this chapter experience. Was that a reference to the Jimi Hendrix experience?
I guess you could. It could be, because it was, on another level. The Jimi Hendrix experience was basically Jimi Hendrix giving you a whole other feeling about something. And that's what Miles was doing here. It was that. It was, you never heard this before. We were in there creating it and never heard it before. All of it was something, it was a one-time experience, something that, it happens, it will never happen the same. Like if you tried to do that again, like when he took it out on the road, it couldn't have the same impact. It couldn't have the same impact because it was all raw and happening there. And so, yeah, it was a special experience. It was a Miles Davis experience. It was a good jam, a couple of good jams on that tour.
Oh, I want the thing about Jimmy, for your whole life, that famous black and white photo, February 10th, 1968 at LA's Shine Auditorium. How'd that happen?
That was a jam in the afternoon, sound check, as I recollect. And we did that a few times. In fact, Jimmy, when he did his last tour, we were when he came back, he wanted to get a thing together with Miles and myself.
With Miles, right?
And Buddy. And that might have been something. But we had, playing together was an easy thing for us. It was a good jam, a couple of good jams on that tour.
Do you remember what song you were playing when that photo was taken?
I have no idea. No idea.
Do you remember what you were thinking when you saw we were looking at him?
It was like, I was just thinking, back at you. It's like, we were kind of like just going for it together. And, because it wasn't, we were used to being together. So it's not like an experience.
Right.
It's kind of like, we're just kind of like plugging into this, and it was really cool. It was fun.
Well, you just said that, he was talking to you about you joining him and Miles in a new project. And, you say that Jimmy's death was caused by him being the golden goose.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it happened in a lot of situations, when you have the money maker.
Right.
The person that generates the income for the organization. Now, Jimmy's manager kept Jimmy out on the road, working all the time. Yeah, Jimmy loved to play. Jimmy loved to do, but Jimmy was a human being. So, Jimmy constantly had to be playing 4 or 5 concerts a week, every week, on these tours, and he toured a lot. And that paid for overheads of everybody, and Jimmy, to do that, he had to sleep, to get going. The drugs came in. There's always somebody there to give him some drugs. Could be from the manager, could be from the record company, could be from a good buddy, doing him a favor. And it's a tough thing. And so he's the golden goose. He's bringing in all the cash.
Noel once told me that this is decades ago, that Mitch Mitchell had found one of Jimmy's guitars and sold it for $250,000, and he was pissed. He goes, me and the Hendrix estate should have gotten the money, because in that band, whenever we lost something, the person didn't buy it, the band bought it. So if you sell the guitar, sell the equipment, it should have been split up 3 ways. So I go, so what do you, he was pissed at Mitch for taking advantage, and he was pissed at, I go, what do you think of Mr. Hendrix taking control of Jimmy's songs in the state? He goes, he's a fucking janitor. And there was a lot of animosity, and I could sort of see, everybody's looking for money with everybody,
Well, and when you're the golden goose, you're the one. His name made that happen. That guitar, and so, but that's the story, and so it's basically like working somebody, like a slave on a pyramid, working them to death, because you can't stop, because if you stop, then the money stops coming in, and all those people on the payroll don't get paid. Who else is in the stable? There's only one golden goose, to my knowledge.
A lot of your book is, an inside look at the demise of some of the great icons. This is also a book about survival. Is that fact or fiction?
Fact, absolute fact.
You were in the Shaboo All-Stars in Connecticut, the Shaboo Inn in Willimantic. That's a legendary band. I think they still might even be around gigging. How long were you in the band?
I think it was like on and off for, 3 or 4 years, depending on when I was working or what tour I was on or what the thing was. But that was some incredible playing,
Great band. I saw you play.
You
Bonnie lived in Westport, Connecticut, and you were living there at the time, and you knew Bonnie and her 2 older brothers from high school. Her brothers' names Lloyd and Maury Ruza. And tell me about how you got together again.
I was the media director for the Discovery Museum, and my job was to bring in younger people and have them interested in art, science, and industry. I had just seen the Sotheby's auction with piano player. Anyway, an auction with rock and roll memorabilia, and it did very well. And I did not know a lot about rock and roll, and I presented to the board members the possibility of doing a rock and roll art and artifact exhibit, and they went for it. And now I had this thing that had to be pulled, and I knew nothing about it. My friend Gail Cohen and Terry Cohen suggested that I hire Bob Ellis, who lived in Weston, Connecticut, to work with me because he was a music guy. He'd been married to Diana Ross. He's the manager with Meatloaf and with the Average White Band. So we connected, and Bob and I started putting different things together for this exhibition, with Peter Max, Michael Lang. Bob wasn't very familiar with the early 60s music, 50s, 60s music, and there was a hole there. So I put an ad in the local papers, Connecticut, Boston papers, saying that I was looking for musicians who would be interested in sharing their memorabilia stories with the museum, and I would have it mounted for 3 months. I got a call from a gentleman by the name of Frank Sanzo, who gave me a list of names. Richie Havens was on the list. The Clarks were on the list. A lot of people were, and Harvey's name was on the list. I hadn't seen Harvey since high school. We knew each other in junior high and high school through my brothers, but I was not in that world. And actually at 18, 19, I moved out to Santa Barbara. I knew Harvey had become a musician from my brothers, but I knew him as Goldstein, and the name on my thing was Brooks, but it was a Queens area code. So I called Richie, and Richie agreed to do it, and the Clarks agreed to do it. The Average White Band was great. They agreed to do it. And then when I saw the area code with Harvey, I said, could you be the same Harvey? I left a message on his answering machine that I knew in high school, and that was it. I left it, and I guess a couple of weeks later, I got a call back, and Harvey said it was. And I explained what I was doing. He suggested that I meet him in New York because he was living in Queens with his mother at that time. His father had just passed away, and he had helped her get her footing again, and had helped when his father was moving onward. So we met in New York. When Harvey said he'd be at Sony, that he was a bass player, I thought upright bass. I'm not rock and roll background at all. I knew if I liked something, I was a big fan of Stills and Croft and a lot of other people as well, more of a folkie. And we met. And that was like Harvey agreed to do it. We went to lunch. And he said he was going to be playing in Connecticut in a couple of weeks. And on his way back, since he was staying overnight, he would drop off records and a couple of guitars, and we'd get this together for the museum. And he didn't turn up. But I got a call on Sunday. That was like a Sunday, and it was in October, and it was rainy and kind of cold. And he said he'd gone back to Queens, but could he come up around 4 o'clock in the afternoon? And I thought it was a little odd because, like, why would you want to come back? But he did, and the rest is history because he really never left.
Well, what's really cool about, Bonnie, I met you. You're so talented. You're a producer, you're a painter, you're an artist, you're a photographer, production manager, media director. You even have a great children's book, Gramps Has a Ponytail. I mean, you're a ball of fire yourself.
Listen, when you're a single mom with 3 kids,
Amen.
You go around and do, well, I also was Westport, Connecticut, and I was lucky because I have some really incredible friends who supported me and connected me to a lot of different entities that I don't think I would have found in my small lifetime in Connecticut.
Or you perform? No, you don't perform. No, you don't perform any instrument. Okay.
I play the piano, and I call myself the happy stutterer. But I did work with Stop the World, I Want to Get Off in California, and funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. So but not rock and roll.
All right, well, I'm wrong about that, but I am right about the fact that you knew Keith Richards first, and now you go on double dates sometimes, right?
I worked on a job when I had my own company, and I worked on a job for Clairol, putting together, they did a photo shoot of the models that were on the boxes in the 60s, and now they're reshooting them to show that they look better at that time than they did in the 60s. And Patty Hansen, who's Keith's wife, was on one of the boxes, and she brought her kids to the shoot. And I worked with Alex Gunny and Amy Califer and the Frebonis in Weston, Connecticut. And I used Amy's offline equipment to edit a lot of these projects. It was less expensive. So they were very good friends of the Richards, and so were the Frebonis. So one night I got a call. Harvey was out playing actually with Shabu All-Stars. Right. And I got a call. It was like on a Friday night. And it was from Amy saying that Patty and Keith were at the house. And could I come up because Keith wanted to meet me as Harvey's wife. And I have to tell you, I did not know who he was. I knew Patty. And I said, well, I don't really like to go out unless I'm with Harvey because I don't know who he is. And she said, please come. And I went up, and he was an incredible gentleman. He kissed my hand and said, Harvey's wife, and really lovely. And Patty, I have to say, is one amazing, amazing woman.
Was she wearing his skull rings?
She is a fashion model. She's just an amazing, stabilizing person. So we connected. It was a friendship. And the funny thing was, Harvey had never met Keith, and I told Harvey the story that night when he got home. And the next day we regularly went yard sailing in Westport, and we went out early. And on Saugatuck Avenue, a car was rolling down a driveway into the Saugatuck River. And I'm watching it come down, and we then go into where this yard sale is, where the car had rolled down. And I announced that somebody's car had just stopped short of rolling into the river. And I looked, and this guy with dark glasses is there, and he puts his finger, because I knew who he was, and he put his finger to his lips. He says, please don't say anything. And of course we didn't. I said to Harvey, that's Keith. And that was the beginning of this continued friendship with Amy and Alex, who would do these incredible you never knew what you were going to get. It could be roadkill dinners with stories around the table that were just amazing. So that was the beginning of this friendship.
You know, I want to talk about you moving to Israel.
Yeah.
Bonnie's oldest daughter lives there. Bonnie suggested a move to either San Francisco or a leap of faith in many ways and move to Israel. And Israel's great because, you know, it's another language, another culture. You know, I read that you said that it's like now you know what it's like being an immigrant in the United States. What's it like being there? You know, in Israel, are you getting more acclimated now?
Oh, we're very acclimated, but you do understand that Israel is not how the U.S. defines it. It's similar to the U.S. in many ways, in the sense of there are many different cultures and diversities within different neighborhoods, and they have invisible walls around each of them. So if you don't know the language, and I don't mean Hebrew or Arabic, I mean in general, the culture of each community, you're kind of an outsider.
Right.
We live in a neighborhood where it's a mixed bag. We have a lot of Americans, Europeans, UN, it's Arab, Jewish.
Of Israeli Arabs?
Well, 2 blocks down is that whole area where the evictions have taken place. But we're here 13 years, and in this location, we're here already 10. 10.
Wow.
So we know our neighbors, and we understand where you don't step and where people's feelings are. And I'll give you a generalization that kind of captures in my mind what it is. I take a belly dancing class once a week, taught by a 30-ish year old, very religious Muslim woman.
Right.
All right. The class itself has about, I would say at this time, 30 women. Half the class is Arabic. The other part of the class is religious Jews. And then there's us on the side. So meaning that the average age I'll say is 60. Okay. Meaning there are younger women, and there's a woman in the class who's 93. Now, they come in, Arabic women are in their burqas. The religious Jews, some of them have, go get your water, wigs, and the head coverings, and everybody strips down, no pun intended, to leotard, and the music goes on, and some of the Arabic women put on their coins, and they're older and they're moving, and you forget about anything other than the music. That's the cultural crossroad. Does that happen across the board? No. It depends on who you are and where you are in certain situations. We, both Harvey and I, go off the road. So we're kind of a strange animal here, because a lot of people will say, well, why did you come if you're not religious Jew? You're in Jerusalem. Well, we're not. Then the others will say, why did you move to Jerusalem? It's religious. And they're very to the other side. We personally enjoy it because of the differences in culture. It's amazing to go to people's homes and to be included and to become friends. A lot of it isn't a match, because we didn't come here to become something else.
You've already, you've climbed Masada, you've floated in the Dead Sea, You swam in the ocean in Tel Aviv. And
Been up
what
to
else is there?
Megiddo?
What's it like to float in the Dead Sea?
You can't sink. I can tell you that. It's amazing. It's amazing. You know, and then what we did when
We went to Megiddo.
we went to Megiddo, which is
Matt Adams, who's the director for the Albright, gave us a special tour. So we were picked up early in the morning, something like 5 or 6 in the morning, because they dig and do most of the archaeological, and Harrison should enjoy this, early in the morning, because obviously it gets very hot. So for us, it was amazing because it was a private tour. People who come to do those digs come from all over the world, and they're very seasoned and share their information, and you watch them at work. And I'll tell you, in another life, I'd have been part of it. I think it's amazing. The layers that they go through and the technology today that they can use is really something else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they can see down there. They can see what's there, you know, with their X-rays or whatever.
I hear you. Bonnie and I, we're always sending things every day on archaeological finds all over the world on Facebook.
And I know we've disappointed you because we haven't found like any jewelry or.
Well, I keep asking you when you're out your walk. I'm hoping for you to find a coin.
Yeah, well, we may have found
for your daily dog walks.
Well, we got a nice dog jawbone.
Right, well, we gave it away.
We gave it away.
And actually,
at the end of your book, you say your favorite bass lines are Summer Breeze, Seals and Crofts, Touch Me, The Doors, Season of the Witch, Super Session with Stills, Ballad of the Thin Man by Dylan, and Great Expectations by Bitches Brew by Miles. Is that it, or is there anything else you want to add?
To that? Whoa. Well, that takes actual thinking. That's pretty much, I mean, I've been fortunate to come up with a lot of good lines over the years on a lot of things. Some of the Electric Flag things were good. Like when you said "Groovin' is easy," that's got a good bass line.
Right.
Yep.
Do you have any advice to young musicians trying to get their music heard in these tough post-pandemic days?
Yeah, my advice is, first of all, I have to say, musically, I'm at probably the best level of musicality I've had in my life, mainly because my thinking is clear. I'm healthy. I can't talk about my memory. That's, comes and goes. But generally, and I'm feeling real good. I'm hearing really well musically, with a little help my hearing aids. But it's a great spot. And the thing that's going on now in the musical world, very difficult for new people. On one hand, you may be fortunate enough to put something on YouTube or something else that gets a few million plays, and you might make $20 or $30. There's no money in the business, and there's no development to make it better. With the pandemic, we don't know when. You can't make a plan. They can't plan concerts. They can't plan. So it's a time when musicians, artists, and people in general, whatever your passion is, what's going on now is you have time on your hands. Now that's something people haven't had since, way back in history when craftsmen could actually develop something. So take advantage of your time. But whatever your music is, don't expect anything. Do it for love. And have around you as many good business people.
The icing on the cake.
Yeah. You need to have good business people if you really want to attempt, because you have to promote, and there's so many levels of promotion, and it costs money to do that. So that's the story. be true to yourself and love your music. Make your music as good as you can. Study as much as you can. Don't say, I'll just do it. So many have just done it. Well, they
Keep
did it
your
at
ears
a time.
open.
Yeah. And learn. If you can take lessons, if you can study from a book, read, and do as much of that as possible, because it opens up the layman musician type of thing.
Right.
So you could, in an orchestra, you could play in places that need you be able to read and do those kind of things as a side job to your creative endeavors. But most people now with the technology, you have a studio in your house. You don't need anything else, and that's what people are doing. They're making music that way, and it has its qualities and it has its lack of quality.
Hey, in Jerusalem, you're still making music. And I just want to talk very quickly about Elegant Geezer, Jerusalem Session, and tell me a little bit about the album. Tell me everything you want about the album. What's your favorite songs? What people should listen to? Everything.
Well, I have to say that the whole thing it's my first singing album, and it's songs that over the years I've accumulated at where I was at certain times. And there's a love song on there that I wrote for Bonnie, and which is one of my favorite tunes. And it's almost like it was more of a demo quality song that was really from the heart. The instrumentals, the Plum instrumental, you got to get past the opening.
You're talking about Bonnie's tune.
Yes, Bonnie's tune, which is, my love for her. See,
all right, last question that I have for you. The way I end all of my episodes is, first I want to ask Bonnie, what was the first concert you ever went to? And then Harvey, the same question. What was the first concert you ever attended?
I'm a big Steely Dan fan. So I would have to say my first real concert would be Steely Dan and Bonnie Raitt. All right. And of course,
Harvey?
For me, I have to count those early rock and roll shows at the Fox, and which were incredible. I mean, I played so many concerts. I was never really a concert goer, But those early shows, where I saw the R&B big bands and Chuck Berry and all those kind of people, the doo-woppers, that was my first concerts.
Thank you so much, both of you, for spending the time with me. You're in Jerusalem. Here we are in Boston. Thank you so much for being on Wachtelligence. I really appreciate it from both of you.
Have a great, you're in the morning, afternoon? What time is it? It's 9 o'clock.
2 in the afternoon here.
2 in the afternoon, okay.
9 o'clock in the evening here.
So it was our pleasure,
Absolutely.
and we enjoyed spending our time together, and we'll continue with you down the...
and I hope you got what you needed. It seems like cool. Great. Do we say ciao?
Bye, guys.
Shalom. There we go.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Wachtelligence. You can connect with me on Facebook at Wachtelligence. Thanks to my producers, my son Harrison and David Schwartz, and Harvey Brooks for my theme song. Don't forget to subscribe.
I don't care what you think of me. Don't need no jailer to set me free. Don't want strangers filling up my cup. Don't need no advisor to show me down from up.